one of the reasons why I think that his campaign rhetoric and the reality of being U.S. president are going to be very different is just by past history and also knowing Putin and knowing Russian leadership. What do I mean by past history? Well, how can Trump be successful in resetting, improving relations with Russia, where both Bush Jr. and Obama failed? Both of them failed. They tried. I mean, after 9/11, it was Putin that was the first foreign leader to ring Bush after 9/11. And they wanted to work together against international terrorism. Of course, Putin used that for his actions in Chechnya. Then Obama and Hillary Clinton also tried to reset relations after Russia's invasion of Georgia. Both attempts failed. Why should we now assume this will be successful? I don't think it will. And I don't think it will because Russians are Russians and Putin is the person he is. For a successful normalization, shall we say, of relations between both countries to actually take place would require both sides to admit mistakes that they've had in the past, and then to say from now on we're going to create a new era. There is no way in hell that Putin and his cronies is going to ever accept that they've done anything wrong. So it's never going to work because they don't believe they've done anything wrong in either the Crimea or Donbass. They think that all the mistakes and all the aggression is on the part of the West. It's the West, particularly the US, which lobbied and pressured the EU to adopt sanctions. It's the US that's been aggressive vis-a-vis Russia with the adoption of sanctions. So the West should stop being aggressive towards Russia, should drop its sanctions. And then we can have normal relations, and then we'll have equal relations. That's an approach that they argued with Bush Jr., with Obama, failed then, it's going to fail now. Because it's not going to get to the nitty-gritty of why there is tension between the West and Russia. And there's tension not just because of Ukraine, not just because of Crimea, Donbass, but because Russia is hacking in to Western, various Western governments. It's financing extremists, nationalists and fascists in Europe, which are trying to bring down the European Union. It's sending its bombers and ships into Western airspace and sea space. So Russia is been aggressive across the board. And Western intelligence agencies are now believe that Russia is one of the new threats on the block. So that is not going to go away. From a Russian perspective as well, one has to try to understand what Alexander Motyl calls the fascist regime that's in place in Putin's Russia. These kind of regimes can only exist on the basis of either buying up the population, which is what happened in, say, the period up until 2008, 2010, 11, where high oil and gas prices enabled Putin to buy off the population with a higher standard of living. That's no longer possible with the collapse of oil prices due to sanctions. So now he has to foment images of external enemies. Putin's regime cannot exist without external enemies. And if the US as the external bogeyman were to be gotten rid of, who would be the external bogeyman for Putin's Russia? Who? China? I doubt it. I think the Russians are very scared of the Chinese. So again, and one should remember this massive Russian information warfare campaign that takes place on TV, social media, and on other fronts that is completely based on disinformation and lying and aggression in the media sphere. And a lot of that is dreamt up in the search for enemies attacking Fortress Russia. Population should therefore rally around the flag and rally around Putin. Putin can't, without that kind of external enemy, Putin's regime could not survive. So that's another reason why I don't think that any kind of normalization of relations will take place. One final point. If Obama, the weakling, didn't respect Russia, I mean, Obama was the president who described Russia as a regional power, not as a global superpower. So why should we think that Trump, the nationalist, is going to respect Russia as the global superpower? When you have a nationalist cowboy on the block like Trump, I don't think there's room for a second one as well. So from that perspective, we should, of course, criticize Trump where that's required, but there's campaign rhetoric and there's reality as US president. And there's also comparative perspectives as to how does Trump rate, how will he rate in relation to the two Bushes and towards Bill Clinton. And in that, look at Trump as the U.S. president since 1991. Two of them have been good friends of Ukraine. Bill Clinton, Bush Jr. Obama hasn't been such a great friend. He hasn't traveled to Ukraine. He did veto military assistance. So, if anything, I think Trump is going to be more pursuing similar policies as his predecessor, Obama. We shall see. We shall see.